our principles, that was what we were trying to do with, within our own classrooms in the 1970s. In 1975, some of the tribes were concerned about the language. My own tribe, Ngāti Kahanunu, which is on the east coast of New Zealand, the North Island, began a revival initiative, but it wasn't until the Te Matua took a petition to Parliament in the late 1970s that they got, for at least one day of the year, Māori language in schools. By about 1984, it was clear that Māori language was in danger, and the research showed that within a very short time, the reo was likely to be extinct. And our children, in fact, it was a multi-generational outcome that Māori children were not doing well at school. And our elders at the time, in the early 1980s, decided that enough was enough, and a revolution was started called the Kohanga Reo, the Māori language nests. And that was in 1984. It was a grassroots revolution. It was a worldwide revolution because we started in 1984, and then Hawaii and other parts of the world set up their own language nests in 1985. Mm-hmm. In 1987, for the kaupapa Māori, our children were not being educated in the Māori language from after the kindergarten era, which is the Kohanga Reo. It's not really called kindergarten, but the purposes of our international guests. By 1987, what we were discovering was that our children weren't able to continue speaking Māori in the classroom. And without the government support, our teachers at the time had to set up their own schools, use their own resources, and set up the Kura Kaupapa Māori system, which is the primary system. At that same time, around the same time, the Treaty of Waitangi claim was put forward. That was successful in the 1989. Māori became an official language of New Zealand. In fact, it was the only official language, and it was legislated under the Māori Education Act. Around the same time, that particular piece of legislation also set up the establishment of the Māori Language Commission. And then from the 1990s on, you saw a proliferation of broadcasting initiatives like Māori radio, Māori television, and what our ancestors had and our elders had predicted was to make te reo a living, to carry on as a living, normal language used in the community. So there are two systems of education in Aotearoa. There's the Kura Kaupapa Total Immersion system. These are two quite distinct systems, and there's the English medium. In the Kura Kaupapa Māori system, which is the one we're going to concentrate on tonight, it's 100% te reo Māori spoken in those schools, and its children have at least 8 years kaupapa Māori education. The early years from 0 to 5 is Kohanga Reo. Kura Kaupapa is in primary school, wharekura, secondary, and tertiary are the wānanga. And some wānanga are total immersion, some of the courses, but they are not all total immersion Māori. The problem that we have had since inception is the challenge of teacher supply. And the work that we have been doing here, my colleagues, has been to stem that challenge of teacher supply. We work in a section called Toi Kura, which is the Centre for Māori and Indigenous Teacher Education and Research here at Massey. Our research themes are around Kura Kaupapa Māori theory, pedagogy and practice. Our theoretical and philosophical basis for our curriculum that we teach is Te Matua, and Mari will explain that. But the idea is that we're looking at flourishing te reo Māori communities. We have a postgraduate program, Te Pairua, those are the students that are in here today. And then we also have a master's program for Pairua and a doctoral program, Pai Toru. The Kaupapa Māori Immersion Initial Teacher Education Program stems from the problem I've talked about, teacher supply. and where we prepare specialist graduate teachers in kaupapa Māori education. We at Massey were the only program of our kind. This is a highly political program. It's a program that was hard fought by. It took us 15 years to get it up and running. Indigenous programs tend to be like that. So, and we are always under threat at every level. So we partnered with the overarching body of the Kura Kaupapa Māori system called the Runanga Nui o Ngā Kura Kaupapa Māori, and we co-constructed the program with them as well to prepare teachers for teaching in kura. The whole program is based on Māori language, culture and values. It's underpinned by kaupapa Māori philosophy, which means that it's Māori-centred pedagogy and practice. It's a state-funded program, and it has an approval process through the university. We know we're the only one of the kind pretty much across the Western world as well. It's an innovative program because it's total immersion. We now have a 3-year program where it's blended in that we have face-to-face and our students are here in a face-to-face week. They have 3 of these sessions, 4 of these sessions a year, and we also have the program online. We launched it in 2012. In 2018, we launched a 3-year program, and that means that we have students that have a national access. The other thing that's important is that our students don't have to leave home. They can remain in their home area, their home base, their home kura, and work for their own communities. There are 4 knowledge areas. The contextual studies, this will be familiar to other people as well. Contextual studies, professional studies, numeracy and literacy, and integrated subject studies. And I'm going to leave this part here to introduce Māori, who will carry on and talk about the Te Matua, postgraduate diploma in Māori medium.
Kia ora tātou. Tēnā tātou. Hi everybody, everyone who's joined us from all over the world. Thank you for being with us at this webinar. So this particular program here, Te Aho Whairewa, which is our 1-year postgraduate degree. Students arrive to us, they have already their undergraduate degree. And in this postgraduate degree, what we're doing is we're introducing them the pedagogical practices using our philosophical base of Te Matua. This particular framework that we have, we're centred in the middle, Massey University as the program development and delivery. So we're in the centre of this program, but on both sides, on either arm of this program, we have the Runanga Nui o Ngā Kura Kaupapa Māori. They are the caregivers of this philosophy. So they're the ones that actually have what we call the mana. They have the power to be able to decide when and how we use this particular knowledge. Our pedagogy, our Māori pedagogy, our practices, they're also in line with what the Runanga Nui are doing within their own schools in the kura. And then on the other side, in the yellow, we have our kura hāpai, which are our schools that our students go into. So we have 67 kura kaupapa Māori in Aotearoa in New Zealand. And when our students are on the program here, they actually have to go into the schools, do their practicum over a period of 70 days. This is for postgraduate degree. Undergraduate degree is 120 days. So the partnership we have with the Runanga Nui, they are our sector, they're the industry that we're actually working with, this co-construction that we're working with. The development of all the programs, the courses that we teach in our programs in line with the philosophy of Te Matua, total immersion Te Māori, However, in saying that, the students do have to do readings. So part of the readings that we do give them are in English. We do understand that there are some difficulty around the academic language that they're having to look at. So it's still we still do the transmission of what these particular readings are in Māori, and wherever necessary, we actually try to help them understand what's being written in English. The Kura Hāpai are field-based support schools. When we set up the Kura Hāpai, which is the schools the students go into, they are also given a Pawako Hāpai, which is the support teacher, to help them during this particular course. They actually cannot get onto our course without a Kura Hāpai, and that was purposely done so that students within their community, they have the mentoring while they're actually not in attending the wānanga here at the university. When they go back into their own communities, some of them actually come from very rural areas, so they don't have access to internet and things like that. So having a Kura Hāpai, they are able to go to those schools to get that specific support. We have Te Aho, which is our board of studies, which is an external group that come in, and they actually are there to actually ensure that what we're doing, what we're saying we're doing, is what we're doing. So we have 2 programs, Te Aho Tātarangi, bachelor's degree, and then our other program, Te Aho Paerewa, which is our postgraduate degree. So Te Aho Kura is 2 programs. Here we have what we call the heru, which is the first design, the 4-pronged hairpiece, and there we are looking at the 4 programs that we're working towards developing. Okay, this has just come up. No, I've just lost my bit. So the tuakiri o te tangata. Now the tuakiri o te tangata is, there are 6 parts of the Te Aho Matua philosophy. The tuakiri o te tangata speaks about the characteristics of the child, which is very important as part of understanding the pedagogical practices that we use. Okay. This slide here, the woman in this particular slide, her name is Koka or Fire Katarina Te Hei Kōkō Mataira, as one of the main writers of the Te Aho Matua philosophy. She, over a period of 6 months, developed the actual philosophy with other writers. There was a total of 12 writers. So this particular philosophy is the only one in the whole of New Zealand, and actually, in fact, the whole of the world. And it's actually been legislated in the section of 155A of the Education Amendment Act 1999. So that is Dame Katarina Mataira, who is the principal author. Okay. There are 6 parts, 6 principles to Te Aho Matua. Te Re Tangata, Te Reo, Ngā Iwi, Te Ao, Āhotanga Ako. So the first one, Te Re Tangata, talks about human essence. So this affirms the nature of the child as a human being with spiritual and physical well-being, its emotional requirements. So within our own practice as teachers, we have to consider taking the tuakiri o te tangata, all the characteristics of the child, into consideration when we're teaching. Here we have the mode of teaching, of course, is wānanga, which is our 1 week or 5-day contact courses that we have with students, and we also have the online via stream, our Moodle system that we have through Massey. We have experts and practitioners of Maori Knowledge. We have 2 women here besides myself. The one in the centre is Katarina Mataira's daughter, Neria Mataira, and the one to her right is Dr. Kathy Drews. Te Reo deals with the language policy. So the language policy, Te Reo Māori is one of the official languages of Aotearoa. along with the sign language. He taonga te reo. So he taonga te reo, without, I suppose, that what students need to know when they're coming into the course and having te reo Māori, they need to have understand that the first thing they need to have the reo, Te Matua te reo Māori. So there needs to be an expertise within the reo Māori so that they're able to teach the tamariki, the children. Here, it's applied through literacy and oracy. So it is very important that the spoken language, which is maintained within our own protocols, Māori protocols, we do that within all the programs. Every area has its own dialectical validation. So by doing so, we're saying to students, you come with your own dialect from your own tribe, and we don't say to students they are not to use it. We actually encourage that they use their knowledge from their own tribe and that they use their own dialect from their own tribe. And the medium of instruction for the courses are all done in te reo Māori. Ngā iwi, this is the third section of Te Matua. So ngā iwi, it's about the knowledge base that comes from within each of the tribes that you are connected with, the social groupings within your social groupings as the teacher, and your social groupings with individual children within your class, that are all influences the way in which you are teaching the tamariki. And all people who are there, they interact with, is to make sense of what the worldview is. So how is this applied within practice? Students use their own tribal knowledge and base for making it more meaningful. It's located within the kura hapai being their support schools, and usually in their own tribal areas as well. And also then we have our wānanga, which are our contact courses. There are 3 one-week contact courses, but for this particular group that are here today, the postgraduate students, they have 4. And there, of course, we also have the stream platform, online courses, and the support that they get from their kura hapai. For section number 4, te ao, the world, so their worldview, the world surrounding the child. So we've moved from their particular base of their family, their sub-tribes, their main tribes. Now we're giving them a worldview. And the worldview is about where do I stand as a Māori with my culture, with my language, within the world, within a bigger worldview. The fundamental truths that affect their lives is these children need to understand that what they carry is being Māori, not only the language, but also the culture. We believe that we as guardians of our own land, we have the fundamental truths to be able to move forward, not only for ourselves, but for everybody else. Okay, so te ao is the 5th section of Te Matua. This applies to the practice through political studies, social cultural status, and human studies. So the tribal knowledge, we go back to the tribal knowledge and ensuring that it's meaningful for each student. And when a student brings their own tribal knowledge, what they bring with them is also the ancestral, the whakapapa, which is the ancestral knowledge, genealogy with them. Knowledge of tribal history as a basis for understanding their world knowledge. How does it affect the worldview with the knowledge that they have about their own tribes? Global awareness and the implications that it has for not only ourselves, but everybody in the world. Āhuatanga ako is the way we teach, the circumstances of learning. So provide for every aspect of learning which the whānau, the family, feel is important for their children. How do we do that? We have to always think about the child as the taonga. They are a gift given to us. How we teach them, the way we teach them, is reflected by our knowledge about our own ancestral and our genealogy and our connection to that child. Requirements of the National Te Matua-based curriculum. We have our own marautanga or curriculum, Te Matua curriculum, and that ensures that we're maintaining Maori knowledge and protocols that are pertinent to Maori. Āhuatanga ako is applied within the practices when students go out to their schools, to their kura hapai. So students are placed out into their kura, into the communities. They carry with them the protocols and all the knowledge that they already actually come with. They come with that already. And for us, it's just to help them and ensure that what we give them is just he mea tinaki, hey. Ngā tino uaratanga. This is the final chapter of Te Matua. It's the essential values, which focuses on the student outcomes. So in ngā tino uaratanga, they are our ngahua ako. So for us, we look at the values, the essential values, and we strive. We hopefully strive in the way we teach our children, in the way we bring up our children, that we are going to get to the pinnacle of ngā tino uaratanga. And this defines the characteristics and the differences, I think, about what our children in kura kaupapa Māori do, and our aim to develop them in such a way is that they are carrying and maintaining te ao Māori, our Māori worldview, using in te reo Māori, with the Māori language. Here we have two pictures of graduating students, and I'm not quite sure what year it was, 2016 I think, and 2018, 2017. That's the final one, have we? So what are we looking for? Our final future focus, the outcomes we seek is that we become, we self-manage the way in which we work and teach with them and live with our ahurea Māori, our Māori culture, that we maintain te reo Māori, that we're speaking in a Māori language, that we're living our lifestyles as Māori, reflect and carry he Māori ora, which is the Māori essence of how we think, how we speak, how we live together within our own society, within our whānau, our family units, within our hapu, our sub-tribe units, and within our iwi. And then we're confident, participating and working together in our language, in our Māori, with our Māori worldview. Economically secure, so working in this kaupapa, students that when they leave, we're thinking that when they leave this kaupapa, they're actually going to be secure in the position, knowing that not only are they teaching our children, but they will be economically secure for themselves and for their family. So the other thing too is that for Māori, we have been resilient for many years. This program in itself is about trying to ensure that that resilience in te ao Māori is maintained using te reo Māori, the language, and also by nurturing using the Māori culture. Nō reira, tēnā tātou. Thank you everybody.
Kia ora Mari, and I just want to thank Mari because she's come in from 2 days of teaching, only speaking in te reo Māori, so she's had to code switch for this whole time, and those of you who are multilingual, you'll understand what she's trying to do and make sense to all of you out there and the rest of the world. I'd like now, this last 15 minutes is an opportunity for you to hear the beauty of our language, to hear, one of the things I want to make a point of is that most of the students that you're going to hear have been educated through the Māori language all of their lives. The other part is that it's less likely that any child who comes through kura kaupapa Māori will fail. They will go on to lead successful, healthy, confident and resilient lives. We cannot say that for children who come through mainstream English medium schools. So the importance of this next 15 minutes, which is why we've given this amount of time, is that so that you can not only hear the beauty of our language, but they are in session. So we don't have the English spoken. It's hurting their ears, I know, at the moment. So they will carry on speaking to Reo. And for those of you who've just joined us, I'm going to ask my colleague, Hona Black, who will ask them questions, and he will translate their answers for you. Kia ora, thank you.
Tēnā tātou. Good everyone. So what we'll do is we'll just ask the students the questions in Māori, and then I'll explain the questions in English, and then as they talk, I'll just translate it bit by bit through pausing. Nō reira, ko te pātai tuatahi. The first question, what role does te reo Māori play in your life and why? Nō reira, ka tupuna tuatahi kia ki tēnei taha, ka ere pera, mō te pātai tuarua, ka tupuna ki tērā taha, ka ki tēnei mō. Nō reira, he aha koe e manawa nui nei ki te reo Māori?
Okay, tēnā tātou. Kia mohi ai koutou. Tēnei taonga te reo Māori, e taonga tuku iho mai o a mātou atua Māori, mai o a mātou tūpuna. Hey, o roa te wā mātou, mātou te iwi Māori, e tū whai aro ana, e tūtai ana mō tō mātou ao Māori, mai i ngā pēhitanga o te kāwanatanga, mai i ngā pēhitanga o te karauna, mai i ngā pēhitanga o ngā karaiti ana hoki. Koinei tētahi taonga ka tae mātou te kupuri ki roto ki te whatu manua, koinei tētahi taonga ka tae mātou te whanake, ka rewa ai, ki roto i a mātou kāinga, i a mātou punenga. O reira, he mea nui tēnei mea te reo Māori ki a mātou. Mā te mōhio ki tō reo, ka mōhio marika koe ki o tikanga Māori, kia tae e mātou ka tae mātou te hikoi, te aro ki mua, hei whainga mō enei o ngā tamariki mokopuna. Ka mutu, anei tētahi tauira, ko whanake haere tō mātou reo ki roto i a mātou te iwi Māori, taku kotiro te reo Māori nahe, ore kau tōna reo Pākehā. Ara mōhio kaua nā hau etahi o mātou, e āhua mataku ana, ka kaua tēnei reanga e mōhio ki te reo Pākehā. Engari, mō mātou, mō taku whānau, ko te hihia kia hakakaha i te tuapapa o te tamaiti, ki roto i te reo Māori, ki roto i te ao Māori, mā tērā whea ka ora ai te reo Māori ki roto i a mātou, ka ora ai te ao Māori ki roto i a mātou.
Tēnā koe. He whakamāteitai tēnei. Kia ora again, so I'll just translate what we have said. So, for Māori, te reo Māori is Yahu mai ngā atua, so it's something that was gifted to us from Te Ira atua, so from the gods, atua Māori, and something that we as Māori treasure. And it's something that we've had to fight for over the years through oppression from the Crown, from the missionaries, and all sorts of different aspects, as Huia had mentioned, a lot of the things that happened over the years to the Māori language, to the point where our ancestors and our grandparents were punished for speaking it in schools. Ki te warawara ia, whakamohio nō mai, ki te pai. And you'll see Wee's daughter over here. She can only speak te reo Māori. And there's a misconception amongst people around the world and including in New Zealand as well, and that, you know, there's a sense of apprehension that children don't learn English. But for Māori, the first priority for us is that our children learn who they are and their language, because it's through their language that you see, you know, they offer a lens into how Māori view the world. And so, yeah, that's everything. So, ka tukuna no te patai kia koe hoa.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa, ngā mihi kia koutou ki wāhi kē, e mātaki ana i a mātou i tēnei pō. Hea te mea nui, te mea motuhake o te reo Māori ki au nei. I tipu ake au i te reo, i roto i tōku whānau, i te matau te kohanga reo, tahi haere au ki te tahi kura Māori. Engari, kāre oku mātua i tipu i te reo Māori, kāre hoku o ki kau mātua i tipu i te reo Māori. Nō reira, ko tētahi o ngā raru mōku, kāre he tuāpapa o te reo Māori i au atu reanga. Nō reira, ki au nei, ko te mea tino motuhake o te reo Māori, kia whakatō te kākano o te mātauranga mō o mātou tamariki, mō ngā rangatira o Apopo, kia whai wā, kia whai mana tō tātou reo i te ao katoa. Ahakoa kaihia koe.
And so, just to translate, just to translate, so many of the people here, many of the students, in fact, grew up in Pohanga Reo, which is the language as Huia had already mentioned. And so they grew up in Te Reo Māori, and Ashley did as well. And for her, her parents weren't able to speak Te Reo Māori, and one of the big issues I think we as Māori face is that often the kura kaupapa kids, the students that went to kura kaupapa and Pohanga Reo, are actually the first generation in their families to speak Māori for a long time. And so they go to schools where they speak Māori all the time, and often they return home and the main language of instruction is in English. So one of the aspirations of Ashley is that she wants to plant the seed of the language into the generations that are yet to come, and for the generations, in fact, that she will probably never know.
Tēnā koutou e noho mai o kainga whawhiti. Mō kua ke nei, ka kutahi aku mihi ki ngā tamatua, mei kore aki a rātou, ko kore o tōku reo. He hua tēnei no te kohanga reo, no ngā kura kaupapa Māori, no reira tōku reo, ko te reo Māori, tōku reo tuatahi, te kauma toru aku tau i apau te reo Pākehā. Ko te reo, hei tā Derek Laudeli, ko te reo te whati toka ki te ao Māori. E mōhiu ai koe ki te ahurea Māori, ki ngā tuakiri Māori, ki ngā tikanga Māori, me mōhiu koe ki te reo kawe, ara ko te reo Māori. Koia hoki ko te reo he tau kāia ki o mātou tūpuna, ki o mātou ira atua pera ki ngā tōrero a ui i tēnei pō, i tērā ata. Hei whakakapi pia i enei whakaro, ko oku karaua i patu ki te kura mo te kōrero Māori, i patu ki te kāinga mo te kōrero Pākehā. Ka hua mai, ka whānau mai tōku māma, oku mātua. I werohia rātou, e o rātou mātua mo te whakaako i a mātou ki te reo Māori, i te mea i o rātou whakaro kāore o na hua. Kei te kite mai i tēnei rā, he nui ngā hua o te reo Māori, ko au tētahi, koe au e whai ana i tēnei taonga ka mehame. Tēnā tātou.
Yeah.
So I'll just translate again. So begins talking and acknowledging Te Matua, as Huia has already referred to, and that the decisions they made in those years greatly affected our language today, and we acknowledge that, along with the kohanga reo. And often, sometimes we really acknowledge that staunchness that those that have gone before us have been in regards to te reo, and we try to actually maintain that and be staunch in that ourselves, as an acknowledgement of the mahi that they've already done prior. Only learnt I Koe Te Maturu anei when he was 13, began to learn English, which is probably just getting out of primary school into secondary school. So, you know, it's definitely a difficulty, but it's also quite a strength, I think. And he refers to a saying by Derek Liddell, who's a renowned expert in things Māori and Aotearoa from the East Coast, saying, ko te reo Māori te whatituka ki te ao Māori, which means that te reo Māori is maybe the anchor to the Māori world, and that in order to actually understand deeply Māori customs, Māori protocols, and Māori ways of viewing the world, then you must know and must understand the language itself. Grandparents were punished for speaking Māori at schools and returned home, and were also punished for speaking at home. And so often generations that followed didn't want their children to speak Māori so they wouldn't get punished. So often that's what parents did, and that was obviously very bad for te reo Māori, as you would see in probably the statistics over time, because they thought that there was no fruits in learning te reo Māori.
I ngā iwi, ngā reo, ngā mana o te ao, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tōku reo, i ahu mai te kāinga. I tāku pūtaketanga ki tēnei ao, i waiata taku māma, he waiata oriori. E karanga mai ana i au ki tēnei ao. E tikanga Māori tērā, ko te reo e kawe ana i tērā tikanga. Ara, ko au tēnei he whakawaha ana i ana kupu, i ana kōrero, i ana pūrākau, i roto i taku reo Māori. Me mōhio koutou, he rereke te reo i arohe, i a iwi, i a hapu. No reira, e pai pānga ana ki tōku taia, tōku reo. Ko au, i ahu mai i te taha moana. No reira, ko ngā mātauranga, ko ngā tikanga, o tērā takiwa, kei roto i tōku reo.
Translating. He was born into the language, and his language is the language of the home. And when he was born into the world, and prior to his birth into the world, his mother sang oriori to him. So oriori are songs, traditional songs composed for children that recites their whakapapa, so their genealogy, and their lullabies. That would be the English term for it, lullabies, for children. And they were sung by the parent to the child. So as they grew up, they knew exactly who they were. So this was the world he was born into. And refers to the language that he speaks as the language from home. What he's referring to is that different iwi have different dialects and often those dialects reflect the environment in which those iwi live. And so he grew up by the sea. So a lot of the mātauranga and the knowledge that he draws from comes from the sea, and it's reflected in the language that he speaks. Patai tuarua. Yeah, we good with time? Okay. That's us.
Whātai.
Okay, so we have the final 15 minutes. I just want to thank our graduates for postgrads for coming to enhance this session. I think it was really important to hear their voices and the realities of their lives as living normal Māori speaking lives in Aotearoa. So this is an opportunity to now, for anyone out there who has any questions, we'll take questions. And you can ask anybody, any one of us.
Taking it to net. Sorry, to get it to net. I can never ask a question. Oh, okay. 2 minutes.
We've either dazzled you all and left you speechless.
Okay. So is it Gregor or is it us from Rovaniemi? Okay. So
No.
so this is,
I can hear.
yeah. So do you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
So this is Tuija from Rovaniemi. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. And it's very eye-opening how much work you have done in a fairly short time. If you think that from middle you started to work with Maori and now you are, so that is very very good work you have there. I'm interested in studies. So I took you a little bit more about the context studies and how they are.
Jeanette, was that from one of your people there? We can't quite see the picture, and it was a little muffled. Are you able to repeat the question?
Here. It was Tuija from here from University of Lapland. She's sitting right there, so I'm not sure if you can see her.
Yes. But can you repeat the question, Jeanette? Because we couldn't quite hear. It was a bit muffled.
Yeah,
She's either got to get closer to the microphone so we can hear.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much for your session. It was really interesting, and I'm interested in the context studies you mentioned in the presentation. Could you a little bit tell more about them?
Content studies.
Contextual.
The contextual studies.
Hi, kia ora. So the contextual studies actually look specifically at Maori knowledge and how we use that knowledge to teach specific areas. So for example, if we are using the god of the sea, Tangaroa, as our contextual as our theme for teaching within that contextual knowledge. What we need to think about is what is all this knowledge and where can it be placed within each of the curriculum areas? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I think what the other part to this is that unlike the Western, unlike the Western education where knowledge is broken up, in the Māori world, we base it on whakapuka, so that the world is all interrelated. So we don't differentiate between flora and fauna. They are our ancestors, and it's in that context that Māori was talking about, that you include all aspects of te ao, of the world, as part and parcel of who we are as people. I'm not quite sure if that makes sense. But it's quite a flipped worldview compared to the Western British system that arrived on our shores from 1769. And if we were to align it to the Western curriculum, you know, science, we've used science forever. Our whole worldview is scientific observation. So the curriculum isn't divided up, although that's what our government would like us to do. So the marautanga, the curriculum for the Kura Kaupapa Māori system of education, flips that so that it makes sense to our children, in our world, and that is to make it so that it isn't divided up and dispersed, because everything is related. And so the curriculum is about relationships. Our whole worldview is about relationships and how we relate to that. That's a long view of that question. Any more questions?
Kia ora koutou. I think it's my turn now.
Kia ora, Jude.
Kia ora, Huia. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your presentation. I love the passion that I could just feel the passion behind what you were saying, and really appreciate you sharing with us tonight your program. I work for Massey and I actually know nothing about the program. Isn't that terrible? So for me, it's been great to listen to you. Thank you. And I was interested in, Huia, in your presentation, you mentioned and had a slide about understandings of the child. And I just wondered if you could share a little bit more with us about that.
Was that with the philosophy, the Te Matua philosophy?
Tira tangata,
Tira tangata.
I think so. I'm sorry, I scribbled something down here and I've just written understandings of the child. It's on one of your slides, and I think you.
Ngā tino uaratanga.
Is it this one? The understanding the nature of the child as a human?
That's the one. Yes, that's it. Te ira tangata. I just wondered if you could. I guess I'm interested from the students themselves. What does te ira tangata mean to them in their teaching practice?
Nei koe ke kororo, te te hopota. Ana ka hoki mai hona me te whakapākea hia I o kororo. Ke te pirai, ke te kore, ke te pai māku. Sorry, Jude, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. I was interested in what te ira tangata means for the students themselves when they're actually working with children in the kura. So what does it mean to them, and what does it look like in practice? I just love the idea of it, and I guess I just wanted to know a little bit more about what that might mean.
Oh, Marco, kei he te pepa me te pene.
Tēnā koe, Jude. Mō ake nei au e whakaako ana ki ngā kura, ko te tuakiri o te tangata tēnei. I kōrero Pākehā. Ko te tuakiri o te tangata tēnei. Nō reira, hei tauira pia iau I te kura, I whakaako mai aku kaiako, I ngā whakapapa kiriki. I rungo au I ngā kōrero mō te menato, e rā momo tangata, Poseidon, e rā momo. I au I reira, e toko te pātai, he ingoa anō tērā mo Tangaroa. Heha te pānga o enei kōrero ki ahau. Nō reira, ko te pūtaki o te ira tangata nei, he aro pū ki te tuakiri o taua tamaiti, hei whakawhanake ki roto I te ao Māori, kia whakatō I ngā rapunga whakaaro Māori, kia whakatō hoki I ngā taonga, e pai ai tā rātou hikoi ki te ao Pākehā me te ao Māori. Mā hona e whakatā.
And so Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata, what Parikaro was talking about was when he was at school, often what he heard was stories of Greek mythology and people like Poseidon and things like this. And he often wondered to himself, is Poseidon the Greek version of Tangaroa, who is our god of the sea? And so as he heard those things, there was no, those stories about people from Greek, whilst they're great, what does that mean for the children in the classroom and for him? So Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata, what it refers to is basically the cultural identity of the child that's in front of the teacher. So it's talking about that child and what are their stories about where they come from, who were their great-grandparents, who were their tipuna, who were their ancestors, and what did they do? So that child knows actually who they are, and so they're confident in walking in Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, as well as Te Ao Pākehā, which is the European westernized world. And so
characteristics.
so it's about the characteristics of that child. And so by teaching that child about themselves, then they're able to be confident in their own world and that they're able to think like a Māori. Because so every child has their own distinctiveness and uniqueness and sacredness, and the job of the teacher is to acknowledge that. And so that the child can grow up thinking Māori. Wait.
Te Matua is an amazing philosophy, and it is, as I will repeat yet again, it is the only philosophy of education to come out of Aotearoa. There is no other. We don't take philosophies from any other part of the world and then reproduce it and apply it to the children that are taught, at least in the Kura Kaupapa Māori system. You can, if you were to Google, you can find it online. It is online, so you can read it for yourselves. But it is. It's in English as well. So this brings us to the end of the session. It is now 7 o'clock and we've used up our time. I would like to, first of all, on behalf of our team here, our students in Te Aho Karewa, extend a very thank you for participating and coming along to hear us. I'd like to thank our students, and what we'd like to do is give you a final gift, which is to end with a waiata, a song, won't we?
te o te aroha no e wai e pupu ake ana he awa e mahuna mai ana I roto I te whatu manawa ko tōna matapuna he ohonu ai a kare anō ko tōna matapuna he ohonu ai a kare anō e tai timu e tai pari e tai ope e tai roa e tai nui e tai nui e tai nui
Tapatapa tū ki te rangi hakaia ia kauana kei runga te koti pū kei raro te koti hono. I kona mai koutou mihi mai ko mau te hono. Whiti aro rānea te rangi, rānea te whenua. Te rangi e tū nei te papa e taputo nei. Tūruki,
Paneke, paneke.
Tū mai te toki, haumi e, hui e.
Tai e.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette.
Pehe muhu ai no te hea whenua rātou. Nen, te ia ki Anitra